Words cannot express how much I despise Paul Thomas Anderson. But for the better of humanity, I must try. I'm doing it for the children, the future generations, to spare them. Every time some pseudo-intellectual comes up to them and says, "Oh, you gotta check out There Will Be Blood," they should know better. This director, writer's artistry is on the negative level. It's on the minus level, to the point where you'd be better off watching a Michael Bay movie or a Fast and Furious movie. So let's just jump into the poisonous pool. The first movie I saw by him was called Magnolia. It was a very long movie, and it had an ensemble cast with several different stories that don't really intertwine at all. Kind of reminded me of an Robert Altman ensemble movie. When I first saw it, I was impressed. I thought it was a okay movie. But I think this was his movie where he was just trying to I think he was still trying to prove himself as a new director. So he made some attempt at making a normal movie. He managed to get Tom Cruise, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Jameson Robards, as well as many other big-name actors for this movie. And though he was trying to prove himself as a real filmmaker and make a normal, understandable movie, there was one scene, though, where he gave away his pretentiousness. All of a sudden, at the climax, it starts raining frogs. The next movie I saw by Paul Thomas Anderson was called Punch Drunk Love, and I saw it maybe 2 years after it came out because I really didn't want to see it because I hate Adam Sandler. But everybody I know was saying how great it was, and the critics were saying how great it was. So eventually I watched it. So it's a movie about a guy who's got a temper, and that's about all there is to it. He's an introvert, but he's got a temper. That's basically the only thing I remember about this movie, aside from the following. Okay, something like 5 minutes into the movie, all of a sudden, a piano falls out of the sky and crash lands. What did this remind me of? Oh yeah, this reminded me of when it started raining frogs in Magnolia. So whenever I describe Paul Thomas Anderson to anyone, I'll just say he's such a pretentious director that he'll have a piano fall out of the sky just for the hell of it because he thinks it'll surprise people, or he'll have it start raining frogs. He's on the level of thinking that random events are deep or artistic, and his fans are on that level too. Eventually I watched Boogie Nights because I had to figure out, how did this guy get his foot in the door? This was, I think, his first breakthrough movie before Magnolia, and I thought, everybody raves about this movie. There's got to be something. What was it? And it's nothing. It's a movie about a guy that becomes a porn star, and that's all you can really say. I don't remember there being any plot, so it's just about a guy being a porn star. The other takeaway from this, in keeping with the tradition of it raining frogs and a piano falling from the sky, there's a scene that I remember in this movie where all of a sudden there's no sound for 1 minute. Just for an entire minute there's no sound, right? And I remember thinking, there's no purpose to this at all. And I remember thinking, I bet you there was a sound issue that day, so he decided to just say, okay, well, we'll pretend it's artistic and we'll just have no sound for a minute. And later I read that that's exactly indeed what happened. So that's the mind at work here. If there's a plot inconsistency, if there's a continuity problem, if there's a goof, if he makes a mistake, he'll just say, okay, well, we'll call it artistic. We'll say it's artistic license. Heaven forbid we reshoot the scene and do it the right way. No, we'll just say that we did it on purpose. The next movie I saw by Paul Thomas Anderson was called The Master. It was slightly controversial because they were saying it was loosely based on L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology. But fear not, Scientology, because Paul Thomas Anderson never has a message. He's never making a point, so you don't have to worry at all. It's basically just Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman acting and playing around with each other for 2 hours with no story whatsoever. Or if there is a story, it's unintelligible. What's more interesting or funny than the movie was the reason and how I saw the movie. A friend of mine urged me to go see it with her. And I go, oh no, not the no, that's Paul Thomas Anderson, it's gonna be gibberish. She's like, I'll pay for the popcorn, I'll drive you there. I just want someone to come and see it with me. And I'm like, okay, you owe me one for this. And it was everything I thought it would be. Or it wasn't, it was everything I thought it wouldn't be. And she left afterwards being like, yeah, that was a ridiculous pile of crap. I think this guy gets famous actors because they just like acting. His movies are vehicles for them to act, but they're not actual movies, right? It's an opportunity for them to strut their stuff and possibly get nominated for an Oscar. The final movie I saw by this jerk, There Will Be Blood. I was at somebody's house one time and he says, oh yeah, no, Paul Thomas Anderson, he's good. You gotta see There Will Be Blood. And I can't tell you how many people have said that. Oh, but you gotta see There Will Be Blood. And I'm like, okay, fine, let's put this to rest once and for all. I'll watch There Will Be Blood. Okay, so the movie is about, like, when people were mining for oil, I think. And that's about it. Daniel Day-Lewis plays a really mean guy who beats his son, I think, or his adopted son. And I don't remember any story whatsoever. There was one random scene where he's just chasing his stepson around the dinner table and just being really weird and like hitting him on the ear or something. I suspect that the reason everybody says, oh, you gotta see There Will Be Blood is because it's called There Will Be Blood. Because it's a half cool title. And of course because Daniel Day-Lewis is in it. And Daniel Day-Lewis may be a great actor, but I don't know about his choices of movie roles to be in. But I do know that he worked with Paul Thomas Anderson again with some movie called The Phantom Thread, which of course I'll never watch. So that's it. To young generations to come, hide your wife, hide your kids. Stay as far away from this train wreck of I don't want to call him a director. Stay away as far away as possible. Nothing to learn here, nothing to see. I would say the only surprising thing about him is that he hasn't made like 100 movies by now, since they're all just so thoughtless and empty. I mean, he should be cranking out 10 a year. And I guess that's one great thing about him, is that he is not prolific. Like me, subscribe to me, notification bell me, and comment on me.